So where do we start? I don't know where we start. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
explain.
what have you been doing? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been tracking Murmurations a little bit for a long time, and I've known about it, but I never looked into it a lot. And it was only when you started talking about Planet that my kind of all right, and then showing screenshots. And obviously that's been a long-term thing, but I didn't really know about it that much. And so I started getting interesting. Oh, okay, so what's the plan here? And obviously, yeah, I think that's what kicked off all the discussion. I'm guessing things have been a little bit quiet before that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And so I actually tried to do a new format with my team, which is basically, okay, guys, I'm introducing you to a new thing. You've never seen it before. Let's build something, and it didn't work out exactly as planned because partly because it's obviously that's quite a difficult thing to do, and then partly because our tooling is not as wonderful as slick as I would hope it to be. But so what's happened after that is we've gone at a much slower pace. We actually videoed all of that, so you never know. There might be bits of it coming up, but yeah, it was more hilarious. I kind of like the idea of like a treasure hunt, like here's the thing, let's build something, and then like that as a game. If I just reload that, so this is our essentially for the flow cloud where we store the flows, and there's I think if I just submit nothing, it just brings up everything. And so we can just page. So there's like, we've been developing a lot over the years. So there's just lots of stuff in there to do with different projects we've been working on. But anyway, if I go to Murmurations and look at that,
Okay.
and then, so the first thing we did was, if I just launch that one. Where's it? There. Yeah. So you've got a list. Where is that? I've probably got that somewhere here. Not that one. Is it?
Wow, you've been busy.
Yeah, well, we had a look. So what you've got here is, say, offers and wants. Yeah, this is what you do on the website. You
Yeah,
you load it from, I'm guessing, the GitHub repo where
exactly.
these are stored. Yes, and so we wanted to basically I wanted to emulate that. Uh,
Okay.
but actually, it wasn't as simple because what you've got within um, uh, it, this is what stumped us in the challenge was you've got references. So you're within one schema is referring to other schemas. So there's a JSON schema that then refers to other schemas, and then when you actually render it, you put them all together. We didn't have that functionality when before, but then we built it. So
Okay.
we built something that could basically grab the bits that it didn't have in the main JSON schema and insert them. And so then we ended up with this, which is effectively what you've got there. Uh,
Awesome. Yeah.
that's as far as we've got with that. So basically, just so you can see how this is made, it's kind of I think most of this is well, there's various parts. One is going to the schemas at
Yeah.
so it's live. So if you add more, then this will be updated. Um,
Wicked.
and then doing some filtering, and then we, well, that's actually fetching. This is actually fetching the. Okay, so
The list.
that's
Yeah.
fetching the list, and then there's a form which is selecting the schema, and then there's
Right.
the selected schema. It must be mapping it somehow. Then the JSON dereference. Okay, it doesn't seem to be doing much there, and one of these must be going and fetching the actual um,
Fields.
fields again. I don't know because it can't be downloading all of them at the same time.
Maybe that mapping one.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
don't know.
I think it's probably built into. I think it's probably built. I imagine it's built into this. I imagine that the selected URL is the thing that is then passed to JSON dereference, and that then goes and resolves it,
Okay.
I imagine. Yeah. I should know this, shouldn't I? Um, anyway,
But
so
it's pretty smart. So then
yeah,
can you, in the form, can you then fill in this form and will it validate against the schema?
well, that's the thing I wanted to talk about is like, yes, I suppose what in a sense, what's going on here? So is that what's going on here that you then,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah,
So if you, yeah, if you fill in just the minimum amount of stuff
I
you
just do,
don't
yeah,
really need a lot of,
tags,
yeah, just
fine,
anything. Yeah.
right.
I think it doesn't, yeah, you don't have to hit that add, so you can hit
Okay,
the
let's
other
just
one.
see if I do preview that. Okay, so fill out this
Yeah,
field,
so just
uh,
get rid of that one or
remove that one. Okay, and see.
I think it might want a title now, yeah.
Okay, hello. This isn't going to put anything in, is it?
No, 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 exactly. It will just validate it.
Right.
So it's trying to validate. So it's basically looking against the schema now, saying, and in the schema it says, okay, these fields are required. So when you hit
Right.
preview, if there's something missing which is required, like this, yeah, then it will say, hey, hang on. Oh, now interesting. Don't know why that didn't come up in the same way, but it's basically
Yeah.
saying, yeah, you've got to have some contact details, otherwise
Right.
you won't be
Okay.
able to get in touch with the person. So you can just put in a form or yeah, exactly. That might work now.
Okay.
That needs to be a URL.
Ah, okay. Maybe if I just do that. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, bingo.
So that's it. Great.
So
And then,
then
yeah,
that has validated against the schema, basically. It's just it knows that the stuff you've got is in the right format
right.
and it all looks good, ready for posting to the index, so it won't bugger up when.
Right. So how do you does this form also allow you to post to the index?
Yeah, exactly. So if you were logged in
Okay.
top
Right.
there,
Yes.
then you could submit it. What it would do then would be to save that code on the left that you
Okay.
see, the preview,
Mm.
as a JSON file right here in the test tools of Murmurations,
Yeah.
create it as a JSON file and then register that JSON file with the index.
Okay.
But
And
obviously that means it's not really a decentralized profile. It is then very centralized. Um,
yeah, that's something to talk about. But let's talk about that in a second. So just with this, where we could take this
yeah.
is we could have well, it's got no button at the bottom. I've scrolled right down to the bottom. So basically a preview and similar to that. And if you have credentials or logged in, it could post it. Do you allow, would you allow, is it possible to via API to for us to get access to post things? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So if you
cool.
go back to the test tools,
Yeah,
so like, yeah, where you were, and then, yeah, if you click onto index data at the top.
right.
So here, once you have saved that JSON file, so if you look at the top thing,
Okay, right.
then you would just come here and hit post. Now, this is just a GUI to the API.
Right, got you.
The
Brilliant.
API basically just lets you do these three main things that you see here: check
Okay.
something, add it or update it, or delete
Right,
it.
right.
So if you saved, yeah, exactly, you have your form, you had the preview button, previewed, validated against the schema, and then rendered the JSON,
Yeah,
saved it in your local database at and gave it a URL like
yeah,
that profile JSON,
yeah.
then in the same, as soon as that's done, you could then do a post to
Yes.
the index and it would be there.
Awesome. Um, so just to clarify that, I've noticed that you've got your site here, but so this currently this posts to your central index, but
No, that's just an example for you, and
okay.
that would be Kendra.
Right, so we would post it to something that we host and then post the link to it into the index.
Exactly.
Great. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Then it really, then it is truly
It
good.
is.
distributed, right?
Yeah. So what were you saying wasn't distributed? The index.
No, just that where you were on the profile generator, like the profile generator where we were just filling in that form. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is useful. Like the idea we did this was so that people could do what
Yes.
we just did, fill it in, and then copy and paste that code on
Yes.
the left into a local file, save it on
Yes.
their desktop, then
Yeah.
upload it to their own server,
Okay.
and then post that. So, for example, my OliSB profile
Yeah.
I made in that way because, like I knew what I was doing, but obviously not
Yeah.
a lot of people have done that.
Hmm.
Um, but let me just see.
I
So
stopped sharing. Do you want to share a
no,
screen?
it's fine. I was just
Yeah.
gonna, yeah. So like this is my organization schema here, which
Okay.
I created with the profile generator, just as you did just
Cool.
then.
Great. Okay.
Copied
That's
and saved to my local file, then uploaded it via FTP to my own website, then went
yeah.
back and used that index updater to tell the index that it is there.
Real.
So the thing that really isn't decentralized is because not everybody understands this thing, like,
Right.
hey, take the code, download it, save the local file, upload it to my server. We wanted to give people a way of getting into the Murmurations index, even if they couldn't host their own JSON file. So
Right.
this profile generator that you're looking at now, and that login button at the top,
Yeah.
that just gives you a means of hosting your profile with Murmurations, which is not
Right.
something that we ever really wanted to do, but it's just to help demo the the setup basically, so that you can create and host and modify profiles
Gotcha.
directly in Murmurations.
So it's something like the Planet app or Kendra app or something like that could have a form like this. It's
Yeah,
local and it's not being yeah, and so that would be more distributed in terms of great. Well, I'm kind of I'm glad we did this because it's actually yeah it feeds into the mission. Yeah, great.
absolutely. Yeah.
So other things that we've been playing with. So I think I like to go in little notches rather than anything too. So that's kind of enough for that. We'll play with that and see how far we get with that. But
Cool. Yeah. I mean, do you think, yeah, I mean, if you have questions on the way through, but yeah, getting the validate button so it renders the
yeah,
JSON and checks it against the schema. That would be the next step. And then really saving out your JSON and registering it with the index should be a piece of cake after that, right?
exactly. Or perhaps it might not even need to be saved out in this particular instance. It might just be like somehow we've got to log into something, some space, and we can just it can save it to it or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with APIs anyway. So
Cool.
so the other thing that we've been looking at is the um
Cool. Like your own
index
version of
schema.
a browse.
Yeah. So where
Cool.
you've got so basically that's what you've got.
Yeah.
And so one Geo who's working on this is kind of semi mocked up. So basically we've got this list. I believe that might be actually yeah, I think it is connecting into the same way that we got the list for the building the form. But then all
Yeah.
of these, she says, at the moment are hard coded, and this search here is so we've got this hard coded offers and wants. So basically, her plan is to basically mimic what you've got. So get this whatever you choose here, which does get this far.
Okay.
So if she can then plumb that into that section there, which I think she'll be able to do, then we'll be able to have a results there and then also be able to add these criteria in as well.
Okay. They're just placeholder fields at the minute.
At the moment, yeah. They don't. They're. I think she hasn't tied them in. Yeah, she hasn't. Well, actually, I suppose. I wonder if actually I managed to say anything that. Okay, it does.
Wow.
It does get that far, but yeah, I think she hasn't tied it into the actual uh,
Listing.
URL of the call to the
Oh, I see.
API.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be the next stage. So yeah, it does. Yeah, it's pretty impressive, isn't it? It does work.
Firstly, Daniel, like I think it's awesome that you're doing this
Great.
because it kind of proves the point, right? It's
Mm.
like if there's, for example, Robert and Jennifer, if they get their thing to post into Murmurations, Matt Slater has already got his things posting in. That's some of
Mm.
the stuff you can see there,
Yeah.
Hamlets and D9, so that's great. And then, yeah, like if Kendra is also doing this, it's like, we've also got Hilo and Catalyst where they're publishing groups that are
Mm.
coming in. So we're hoping to do a demo with the CTA because we had a little bit of funding from them for that ecosystems map project. So
Okay.
that's kind of it's almost done now to the point that
Right.
we're hoping that in a couple of weeks we'll be able to say, look, you can make a group just like you just did there using
Mm.
the profile generator on Murmurations, or you
Mm.
can go into Catalyst or Hilo and make a group. And then when you edit your group, you can tick a box saying share
Right.
with Murmurations,
Yeah.
and it will go
Yeah.
through. And then anybody will be able to fund. So then, we'll have quite a compelling case study because that's like
Mm.
5 ways that
Mm.
totally different platforms operating totally
Mm.
different stacks
Great.
can still play together. And
Yep.
as
Yep.
far
Yep.
as like, apart from Fediverse, maybe,
Mm.
that's not ever happened before.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
pretty cool. And it
No, it is
positions
cool.
us as, being independent, but also networked, which I think is pretty awesome. So I think it's ace that you're doing this. But
Mm.
the other thing that I would say was that the general scope of like what Planet aims to be in this first
Mm.
sort of MVP type instance
Mm.
is an example, is a sort of, yeah, is a tool that will let you do basically what you've just shown me.
Right.
So what it wants to do is to be able to let you, you know, ideally create a group and then
Mm.
for that group to have members and so that group has a group profile, just as you just
Hmm.
saw, and then the people within it have personal profiles and they
Right.
can post offers and wants,
Right.
which will stay within that group. But if
Mm.
they also tick the share with Murmurations group, can share with the wider network.
Right.
So, and I've just been sort of drawing out a user flow of what that
Hmm.
might look like from an admin side and then a member
Mm.
side. But it's, 90% of what the functionality is what you've just shown me that you're
Right.
basically
Right. 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 Right.
building.
Right. Okay. Okay. Okay.
So there is a lot of overlap there.
Yeah.
Um,
I love it that we get what we're doing into a state that it's really easy for anyone to build stuff. And just to be clear, because it's not so clear, at the moment it's served as it the PWA is served in a browser, but actually what we want it to be is a standalone app running on your desktop or your mobile phone or that kind of thing. And then you can then load in mini apps or however, yeah, just however complex we can get them to be. And I kind of like the analogy I have is with Excel spreadsheets. It's like you have Excel running on all your devices and you can save out an Excel spreadsheet, email them to each other, load them up, alter them. They're still running. They won't fall apart. And I want to get the apps to be as robust, or the no code part of it to be as robust as that. So you can tweak things, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's not as brittle as normal code, as it were.
right.
Yeah. Um, but that's the dream. And so yeah, so just alluding to that, the desire is to make it so that Excel users can build apps and run them locally, own them completely, and alter them to their heart's content. That's yeah, that's the dream. Yeah.
But do you imagine a sort of hierarchy of users? Because obviously there's the sort of like super user view,
Mm.
like you just gave me when you're
Yeah.
editing, and building like your coder is building within Kendra. But then,
Mm.
do you imagine a sort of slightly more customer facing view where they don't see all, for example, the stuff we were looking at the
Yes.
right hand side, and
Well,
it's a bit more polished and finished?
I'm up for discussing that. And okay, so polish and finish we haven't looked at, and I would like it to be beautiful all over. So no matter what level you're working on. So that's that front. Yes, and I'll talk about the fact of where we're actually in the timeline of what we're building. But in terms of access to advanced settings or ed being able to edit it. That's something I'd like to talk to you and everyone about, that we're building these things, because basically part of the whole reason for this is to empower the end user, like whoever's using it. And if there's like if all of that stuff is hidden, but there's an edit button, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
But what I'm cautious about is actually having a two-tier situation where you can distribute an app, but you can't alter it. It's like having a locked out spreadsheet. I'm just cautious about that because it sort of goes against a little bit of what we're trying to do, which is give people freedom to alter their
Yeah.
technology that they're using. So yeah, I'd be really happy to receive comments or like ideas about. I mean, do you think that might be compatible, that someone could receive an app that you've built and yeah, basically fork it, mess with it, and yeah, that I mean, if you want to sleep on that, then I'm to or whatever that issues that might bring up. I think it does
Yeah.
require that the API is really solid and really secure. I think, and that's a good thing that the APIs are really solid and secure. Because if you can mess with the app, then yeah. But I think
Yeah.
that's the dream.
I mean, I guess, I really like the philosophy that you're following, that
Yeah.
like users
Yeah.
should be able to, and I think it's a big part of what I sort of learned from Holochain, really, and the
Mhm.
conversations with the people there, is
Yeah.
that this whole sort of agent-centric thing is,
Mm.
we shouldn't be building things which say, here I am, this is how you use me. It should be
Mm.
like, this is the tools that I'm offering you, use them as you will, and repurpose them, mix them up. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, I don't know, I just see sort of such a disparity between the different types of users. If I put like, you know, super user here, kind of you at your level, then there's, my mum is down here, right? And I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. And if you go and give my mum the version that she can edit, she's just going to be like, what the fuck? She's going to get lost straight away.
Well, 100%. Like, and when I'm thinking about the stuff that I'm building, it's like I'm thinking about my 88-year-old dad, who's just yeah, exactly. So I want to simplify. I want both to give people the flexibility if they want it. So have that edit button somewhere
Yeah.
tucked away,
Yeah.
and also then present people with a totally simplified view that, I mean, even their children or grandchildren can edit for them to say, "Is this what you want, Grandma?" or something like that. Like
Yeah.
and then that's what they get, and that's their shopping experience forevermore. Like, and so shopping is just APIs, right? So like, or anything, then that's my dream. Yeah, yeah, exactly that. So I think that's really interesting actually. So maybe within when someone creates an app, they can have simplified, pre-built templates, pre-built interface templates, or pre-built interfaces, which you could then mess with, but the simplified user, complex, like, yeah, maybe
Exactly. Yeah.
that's a
Because
good
I
way.
think
That's a good
I
way.
think that for most people, they sort
Yeah.
of need to understand that that's a possibility, and that
Mm.
that those views exist, in order to not get swamped by the complexity of what you're offering them.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yes. Exactly.
and so it's, yeah, my mum, and building
Yeah.
up from the bottom here, it's like, this is 90% of users, then we've got like 5% who are kind of gonna fiddle,
Yeah.
and then there's the 1% at the top, which is like super admin, who are going to want to do everything. So
100%.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, I love it, because I think, I might just venture into this bit at the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think for most users, you do need to spoon feed them, like everything that I've done, just from running competitions and things, and having tech
Mm.
checkboxes, it's all about signposting and UI. Like,
Yes.
if
Yes.
it's not super simple, people bugger it up.
Yeah.
So offering them like in-depth
Yeah.
complexity to the nth degree just
Yeah. Yeah.
feels like, yeah, it has to be sort of done back in a nice way, that then,
Yeah.
like you said, is still immediately obvious, that if they do not like something, that there's flexibility there. And
Yeah.
that kind of becomes your USP, like a
Yeah.
super USP, because no one else has it.
I
Um,
think that's great. I think that's
I
great.
think, in order to make it, drive uptake, really, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Yeah.
those sort of pre-built templates that's just
Yeah.
like, look, isn't this simple? Feel like the biggest part, because that's where the majority of users will sit.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I'm well, yeah, just that's another part I wanted to say is what we've built so far is like 5% of where we want to go. And what we're doing at the moment is like getting lots of use cases and lots of collaborators and building the roadmap for, I don't know if it's version two, but whatever the next version. And I think we're probably going to have to rebuild the thing completely, but still be able to use the JSON flows that we've built. But yeah, in terms of, and so all of this stuff is really important that we have all these ideas in place. And so I don't really want to build it too quickly yet, but actually building, having collaborators right now and sort of getting that kind of feedback is yeah, is absolutely. So I'm going to rush and put that in the roadmap about the different
Cool.
templates. Yeah, no, yeah, brilliant.
I mean, I wonder because it feels like for Kendra to succeed, you need one specific use case where you do go quite far
Yeah,
down that road.
yeah,
Because I can see, like, yeah, in order for it to do everything that you want it to do, it needs that massively wide
yeah.
base, right, with access to all these different APIs.
Yeah.
But you could carry on building them and then never end up with an example that my mum will understand.
Yeah, well, it might end up being that it isn't your mum in the first instance, and so for example, we're working with a music distributor that sends has bunch of artists and sends all the content to Spotify and iTunes and what music, Apple Music and stuff, and they have a very specific need around a protocol called DDEX, and that's the music format for rights, and
Okay.
so there's loads of people with this particular problem that they just need to move some data into DDEX and then transform it out of it. And what we're what we're seeing in a lot of areas, and this is just a kind of the generic concept, is there's a lot of people with problems that are just not strong enough to pay for a solution, and so consequently there's a whole swathe of people with problems that no one's catering for because there's not enough money in solving them.
Yep.
And that's because we're non-profit and don't want any revenue from people, specifically, or we're not selling anything, then that's that's our strata. And so for example, with this particular guy, Free Chords. What's a company, Free Chords, and we're building this DDEX solution. And once that's done, we're just going to put it out there and market it and see who else comes on. And it's yeah, I can't imagine there won't be loads of people that just want to have tweaks and things like that. And then also, I'm describing the situation, what where we think the strategy is, and we're working with a guy called Paul Ingram, who's totally different sector, nuclear disarmament policy negotiation.
Okay. Yeah, no, you mentioned
Yeah,
before.
yeah. Discovered that they have no tooling around tracking the PDFs that have been created each meeting that happens between all these huge states with all these nuclear bombs pointing at each other. They don't, they, in terms of mapping what's been said and who said what and what were the reactions, there's very little actual tooling. And partly probably because there's no money in actually providing a solution. So I think if we have these niches, or lots of little niches below the radar of commercialism, because no one's, it's just there's no money in it. And I think so that's the strategy we're choosing at the moment in order to where we build things.
Okay.
High usage, but and possibly people will start donating something. That would be nice. But it could reach a lot of people, and it could just save people like 10 minutes or half an hour, or for distributors like to push a button and it just does it rather than having to. I mean, so many music distributors are using Excel spreadsheets, and they have to manually copy the data from one to another, and
Mm.
then manually alter it, the date format, for instance.
Right.
Totally nuts.
I mean, but that does feel like a commercial solution that you could charge for, like if you got it into.
It does, and maybe my while I'm alive, while I've got the resources, and while there's money coming in from philanthropists and grants and such like, the idea of having clients
Right.
and going off the flexibility that we have in researching, oh, we're just going to build this, let's see what that's like. Or, I'm building a lot of pet hates, like spam. I want to build things that will help me, well, not necessarily spam, but like unsubscribe from things that don't have an unsubscribe button, or cookies, or the whole, the reject your cookies thing. And why is
Right.
that form you have to fill in on each website? It's totally crazy. And it's taking up amazing time of our amazing life, and so I'm quite angry actually. So I'm cautious about getting stuck in a place where I'm having to service too many people too fast. So that's why, and I think the generic of, yeah, building a generic no code local first app is more important at this stage anyway. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you think you can survive, then I think it's, I totally understand your
That's it.
model.
Yeah.
But I mean, if yeah, yeah. I mean, I always struggle to survive in the end, and
Right.
then
Right.
kind of yeah, people point out to me like, why didn't you try and make some money from that
Yeah.
thing? But to me, it's not the point. I mean, this whole Murmurations thing is just a completely non-commercial
Right. Exactly.
project. But with higher aims, I mean, that's the
Yeah.
point. If you start trying to get money, then you bastardize those aims. So.
I would have said that too. So yes, exactly. I mean, I think we're on the totally on the. So it's interesting you asked the question, but we're totally on the same page. I think about that. That's what happens. I don't think there's a way to avoid that. If you start needing to get revenue, then yeah, you alter the tech. You have to restrict people's usage of it, and then you end up like you say.
Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, I don't know. I still slightly aspire to the idea that maybe there'd be a neat product that, would rely on the tech that we've
Yeah,
built,
right.
that you could hive off as a sort of nice little thing that like you said, you don't want to have customers, right? But you could give that
Yeah,
service. It's like a
yeah,
managed version of Kendra for the music clip people,
yeah.
and somebody runs that for you, and you
Yeah.
have nothing to do with it, and they just pay you so that you can carry on doing the other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. I once had this dream. I mean, not the resources, but the dream to have like 200 companies, somehow acquire 200 companies in 200 sectors, and each one of them would use Kendra technology, but also make money and from using it. And then, yeah, it would be a virtuous circle. But yeah, I don't think acquiring, well, the acquiring is about then being in control of, but I'm wondering if we can do that without acquiring and actually have produced something that is, you see, I think if we produce some things, some stuff like bits here and there that is just useful enough for people that to save them 10 minutes a day, I think
Mhm.
then well, I actually hope that we don't need to turn commercial. I hope that we get, yeah, philanthropists and donations. I hope that that's what's happens. I hope that people just start giving a few quid here and there. If we make that easy enough,
Yeah, yeah.
then
I
we're
mean,
sorted,
definitely. No, no, and there are other examples that work
Mm,
like that. So yeah, definitely. Why
yeah.
not? Yeah, like how far? So say you got the form creation and the index explorer bit like wrapped up a bit more, and all of that was working. Like, where do you see as the end point of that? Like, would you? How far do you want to go?
You know what? Actually, here's how we do it. We have a collaborators document, and in that collaborators document, we actually have a line that says we want the collaborator to own the project. So actually, I'm at your service, or at the service of anyone who wants to use this tech. Tell us what you want. Actually, I because ultimately I want the ability for you to actually build it yourself and go, okay, there it is. So this is a kind of a first pass of going, okay, so this is what it would. I'm a very visual person, so I go with wireframes. And actually, the nice thing about this, it's beyond a wireframe. We're actually mocking it up in reality, and bits of it work. So it's kind of like, here's what it looks like, and now we can build the tech behind it. So I kind of want to get that slicker, and that you could do it. So, but I'm happy in the first instance for you just to say, hey, could you do this? Could you do that? Or what about this? And also, we can have our own ideas, and let's go out to the community and see once they can start using it, if there's something that ends up being built, maybe because it's local, that is not on your website, then they might use this. And then or we make the publishing a little bit, it's a publish button rather, and it just does it to some place
Yeah.
a bit quicker, then maybe that thing makes it slightly easier. And for me, I want to build up loads of sectors and loads of collaborators so that when we do our world tour and go to philanthropists and Richard Branson, say, look, all these people, which much like what you're doing, you're building up a bunch of collaborators, look, these are all the people that we're working with, and it's good stuff. Give us the millions.
Right.
I think that it feels like there's a little bit of a similar strategy with you to validate what's going on with independent organizations. I think that's um, really
I
strong.
think so. I mean, I still, from our side, I think we still need to demonstrate some real user value. Like, and there's the sort of critical mass hurdle that and if enough people aren't playing, then there's not much value in,
Yeah,
creating your Murmurations profile or searching for stuff on Murmurations. But, yeah, even, I mean, that's why I like the offers and ones thing is because it
yeah.
sort of gets you there quite quickly if there's, a few people playing.
Well, so many people, there's so many marketplaces for offers and mods. I mean, I've got freewheelers, and that's still sort of
Right.
just about hanging on. And that's what I want to do once we can see, yeah, make it easy for it to. I think it would initially it would have to be each user can say, like, you have that button to say publish to Murmurations, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So the similar thing like that. So I think yeah, and then we just talk about that. We talk about what we're doing and spread the word. Mm.
Yeah. I mean, but then it's still to sort of prove its worth. Like, to me, it's obvious that this data should all be out there and open and interoperable. And the more it is, the closer we are to the kind of holy grail of
Yeah,
open,
yeah.
collaborative network living. But, it still feels like there's a massive leap, to be able to deliver something that like users are used to, like, eBay or bloody Amazon or list or something, they're going to come onto this thing and they're going to search and they're going to expect wonders and they're not going to get it. And
I think that's going to come with filtering and recommendations. I don't think. I think obviously there will always be a lot of dross everywhere or lots of mess everywhere. And I think if we can create better filters, maybe use AI. I mean, we're kind of like AI second. It's like humans first. But
yeah,
I think all those things are surmountable. I'm often drawn to the analogy of like the Berlin Wall didn't come down in a day. It actually came down over 30 years, and you just saw the effect of it right at the end. And I
yeah.
think we've both been in this game a long time, and I think hopefully yeah, we're doing it because it's right? And so
No, you're right. I mean, people will catch up one day. They have
yeah,
to, or it's the end of the world. But
yeah, exactly.
it I sort of search for, yeah, almost like the killer use case or the real user value that, if you can dumb it down so that
Yeah,
it services someone like my mum and the other
yeah,
90% of people and they get something really
yeah,
valuable out of it. Like you said, even if it's only just saving 10 minutes a day,
yeah.
then and they don't almost need to know that any of this stuff is working in a nice distributed way in the background. You need to feel some value
When
to,
I think of that, I want to empower people to self-organize, which means I don't know what they're going to use it for. That's how I approach this. I just want to make it really easy for people to build apps, and I'm not actually concerned. I mean, I'm too much with what other people want to use it for. I know that they're going to want to use it because I want to use it for like managing my own data and having my own shopping interface and skinning everything. I don't want to see any websites anymore. I just want to have my own interfaces. But yeah, maybe. but then we're different. But I don't spend a lot of time wondering what's gonna work for someone else because I just think it will. And yeah, maybe I'm suggesting that, or maybe we're different and you just have to do the thing that you want to do. But I wouldn't worry about it. I think it will find us. And I think as long as we're passionate about wanting to solve our own problems, then and we're building a generic thing that can help people self-organize, then great.
I guess, I mean, no, I hear you. I do.
Yeah,
I think where you say self-organize, like I sort of, my passion sort of sits more in enabling small groups to form and
yeah,
collaborate.
yeah,
But, so to collaborate within,
yeah.
but also for those small groups to be part of this wider whole, because, there's so much rhetoric out there that, explains how we're quite a bit rubbish in big nations and stuff like that. But small groups can be really effective, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
we could, if all the small groups that were already in existence were somehow mapped and we could network and we could
Mm,
find them and even approach them and ask to join or collaborate or dip
yeah.
in as we want, but see somehow have that overview, that sort of helicopter view of like what is going on, so that you can really find the experts and we stop reinventing the wheels because we can see what everybody else is doing if they're willing to share.
Mm,
Um, then we could sort of, accelerate our way towards solving some of these wicked problems that we face. So,
yeah.
to me, it's more about this sort of group formation and discovery.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I haven't quite cracked that bit of it either. Like at the moment, I'm sort of, I'm tearing my sort of self away from this vision that, Planet as the original concept was sort
Yeah.
of, it's an app where you go and if you want to make a group, you just
Yeah.
go log on, go make a group,
Yeah.
just like Facebook.
Yeah.
But that obviously doesn't work in a decentralized model. So if you have all these decentralized groups, what do we actually need? What is the
Yeah.
software need for those? And, all the research that I've done into that over the 20 years just comes back with sort of null and void answers. Because, like you said, everybody is like, well, I want this. And then someone else is like, I
Well,
want that.
yeah, but I, I'm yes, and can't we? There must be some commonality between them, and that's the thing, and that's the thing that I'm gunning for is well, I mean, because we've in terms of what do I want to create? What things, Excel has constraints. It's a data, it's a grid, a
Mhm.
database has constraints in what you can do with it. And I think having constraints is okay. And yeah, it's just about finding out where exactly to place whatever the offering is. And I just want to say one thing is though is why am I saying this? Stay the course. I was in Totnes. Used to live very near Totnes, and I went to this um, really lovely vegetarian cafe called Willow's. And there was this really old woman. She's probably dead now. This was a good few years ago, and she said, "Never give up." She'd been a protester and all that kind of stuff. And she said, "Never give up," and it's like, yes, and it really fired me up. And that's one thing I really look for is just that longevity. And I think there is something here. You are gathering people together. You don't necessarily know what exactly. And it's similar for me. I don't know. It's like this is a mistake. Kendraio app is a mistake. We somehow arrived here and it then realized that it's solving a bunch of problems that we did have, but we didn't know how. Yeah, we didn't do it on purpose in a sense. And I think there's just something around anything that can bring people together in some, what you're building is a very thin layer. And but it does allow people to come together, maybe as the index, or maybe just because they end up starting to talk to each other about murmurations. And there is something to talk about. There is a common thread throughout. And I think that's enough, just a building of that. And then who knows what can we add a bit of that? Can we add a bit of that? I think, yeah, I think it's early days, even though it's actually not early days. It is early. It's early days for both,
Yeah.
camps at the moment. And yeah, yeah, I think there's who knows, who does know, and yeah,
I mean, I agree. I think it's the protocols thing as well
yeah.
is the obvious answer. Like, we started off trying to figure out how to do what I was just saying, like provide this sort of overview of groups, and we've ended up with this protocol, which is, murmurations at the index and all of that. And
Mm.
now the more I look at it, like, so we're just it's a sort of parallel to this work. We've been really diving into this verifiable communities kind of ID credentials thing, which is
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
And she's done huge amounts of research. So, it's been one of my bugbears for a long time that we haven't really managed to solve this sort of reputation thing. Where's the
Mm.
best reputation tool? And why haven't we got a massive social
Mm.
graph, between everybody across networks? And she's kind of come back and said, okay, I've researched the hell out of this thing and spoken to all these different people, and one-to-one trust real graphs are not the way to do it. She's concluded that actually the way to do it is to have community verified credentials so that you can say, I'm a member of this community. If that community
Hmm.
vouches that yes, you are,
Hmm. Hmm.
then you're in a stronger standing because whereas like you may come, I might do something silly and then you just burn me and
Yeah,
revoke your trust of me
yeah,
and my whole reputation crashes. The
yeah.
whole community is probably not going to do that
More
all at the
robust.
same time. So we're in a better space. And then, then you can define relationships between people and groups and groups and groups. And we get back to this. So we're sort of now coming up with this model for a verifiable community
Right.
credential,
Yeah,
which will be yet another protocol. It's almost like the trust layer of
right.
Planet. If you think
Yeah,
about the sort of murmurations being the sort of search and discovery
yeah,
layer.
yeah, yeah.
So, in that way, like I'm kind of with you because it was not something that we sort of set out to do, but it's like
Yeah.
these things seem to be layering
Yes.
up as quite
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
protocols, which if other
Right.
people agree and think they're sensible
Yeah,
and also adopt, then
yeah, yeah.
maybe we contributed, in a
Hmm.
good way. And it doesn't then require, we're not trying to build a piece of software solution.
Right.
What we're trying to do is disseminate the advantages of using these protocols.
Yeah, yes, 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 yes,
Um,
yes.
but that in itself still seems quite a challenge. I mean, yeah, I don't need to tell you how hard it is because you've been
Hard. Like I
trying all
said,
the
yeah,
time.
I think we're 5% along what we need to do. And yeah, so yeah, it's a lot. I mean, and also scale up the team to, I don't know, 50, 100 developers. I don't know. I mean, I just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's got to be a lot more than three part-time, but
I mean, that's one of my other frustrations. That's part of the sort of purpose of trying to revitalize the planet mission
yeah,
this year was that, it feels to me like there are a lot of very similar, like-minded people like you and I who are
yeah,
working in small teams of two and three and
yeah.
not being as effective as they could if they were to collaborate as part of a wider whole.
I absolutely think so. And it was a part of the shame that, what was it? Festival of Life? Was that where we all
Yeah.
gathered before? Yeah,
That was,
things like that. Uh, that was a really good place to bring people together and have thought exchange. There's Festival of Commoning. Did I drop you a line about that?
don't think so.
Uh, Dill from Mutual Credit is doing a
In Stroud.
Shroud. Yes, yes,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
I think they did one last year. Yeah, and
yes,
I never
yes.
really got the feedback as to how well it went.
It was a small because they had a change of venue and thing last minute. But I think this year it's going to be a lot bigger. I recommend you coming along. I'm trying to draw a few people in, but yeah.
Okay.
And there are things like Gathering of Tribes that happened in Portugal that was interesting. It was a bit too ravey, but there was a lot of good stuff going on there too.
Where,
But
where,
sorry,
when and where was that?
last year in Portugal, I think
Right.
probably about September or something like that. Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't know if it's happening this year, but yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so there's those events, and then there's yeah, then yeah. But like you say, I think we should. Well, this is part of it. That's that's what I hope to do is have light collaboration with different people in different sectors. So this is definitely something I'd like to pursue and yeah, keep going with. And maybe joint funding at some point. That the I know that the goalpost thing they ended up well, I think they did it by themselves, but they maybe included you a little bit. But
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm up for if we can get well, we will get this together, and that NGI what was it NGI Commons
Yep.
that call is going to be ongoing for a year at least. So yeah, I'd be up for doing a proper joint one on that. I think yeah, rather than yeah, just us
Cool.
including you. I think yeah, actually do it together. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not, my success on requesting grant funding has always been terrible. So,
Yeah. Well, we were lucky at the beginning, and since maybe a few couple of years, it's been a lot harder. But somehow we got a really good spate. Well, it was EU projects, but they're very hard work.
yeah,
And I kind of maybe started to veer off them really. But yeah, but they do they can provide you with yeah, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's just it's and
yeah,
traveling and things and dealing with consultancy firms that you might not want to deal with.
yeah, I get that.
Cool.
I better jump off because I'm going to
Yeah,
join another call in 2 minutes.
that's been awesome.
Likewise, it's really
I'll
good.
continue the game and be in touch. Nice one,
All
Ollie.
right, cool.
Take care.
Thanks, Daniel.
Cheers, mate. See you now. Bye.
Ciao.